So what we're going to talk about is improving your writing skills to help shorten your job search. And this is really meant to, be an overview that hits the hot buttons that you can go back and get more information on. So it's really not so much about composition and prose as it is about things to say and things not to say, or how to, structure your communications. Okay. So, why are we talking about written communication skills? Well, we all understand that you don't get to an executive level position without having pretty good, if not excellent, communication skills. Written skills are, fundamental, as with verbal skills as well. Most of the communications you're going to have, at least with respect to getting your foot in the door, is going to be related to some form of a written document, whether it's a bio or a resume or, introduction level. So it's really important to understand how to optimize that communication. And ultimately, it's about your personal brand. So the quality of your writing does reflect on you and your reputation, which is another way of saying, it reflects on your brand as an individual. We all know that the way people speak and the language that they use sort of gives somebody an insight as to the type of education they've had and the quality of that education. People also make assumptions about your intelligence or the way you operate in the real world. And as I said before, it reflects on your brand image and ultimately impacts your unique selling proposition, which hopefully we'll talk about a little bit today. So fundamentally, the quality of your written communication directly affects your ability to achieve your goals, which for those of us here is about either getting new job assignments or new consulting gigs. So the things that we're going to talk about briefly today are with respect to written documents are your resume, your bio, cover letters, thank you letters, LinkedIn, and finally, blogging and the importance of blogging. As a, sort of an overview on the issues that we're going to be addressing is, fundamentally want to make sure that all of your written communication is accurate with respect to spelling, punctuation, grammar, the tone of voice that you use, and the importance of editing tools that are available out there in the real world, including Grammarly, which is one of my favorites and I use quite extensively. Get to the point, eliminate run-on sentences, don't use buzzwords. Adjectives, frankly, and adverbs are self-defeating. So if any of you all, and I'm sure you've read Hemingway, I really like his style of writing because it's short and sweet, gets to the point, and it doesn't use a lot of extraneous words that take you off on a tangent someplace. Make it personal. Make sure that you know your audience, and never send a communication or a letter to whom it may concern. Get to the point as quickly as you possibly can. The reader is pressed for time. They want to know what to do with this paperwork as quickly as possible. They don't need you to give them a lecture on the state of the world and the economy and job search. Tell them what you're looking for immediately and then tell them why. Value white space. The last thing any of us want to read is a legal document. And that's why one of the reasons we hire attorneys. Legal documents, as you know, are, very dense documents. And just looking at one of those documents, is intimidating and not really inviting. As a rule, keeping things to the point and not having too much that anybody has to read is a real positive. The other thing is to, make use of, proper font sizes and and the use of headers and bolding and things like that to really draw attention to the point that you're trying to make. The other point that we'll be talking about is when you're positioning yourself for a new job, people are really interested in your story. They're not just interested in who you work for and what your job was. They kind of want to know how you came to this point and what led from one job to the next. So make it interesting for them. Think about, your life your career as a story, and how, one job helped you develop skills that led to the next job, and or things that you found really interesting that you wanted to pursue, as your career progressed. So think in terms of a narrative that is interesting and tells a story. All right, moving right along. How are we doing? Anybody got any questions?
Oh, yeah, one thing, I've got one thing, Jim, on the back on the previous slide on Grammarly. Just so everybody knows, they do have a free version that works pretty well, and the paid version is not that expensive. And to Jim's point, it's really, really helpful. I was using the free version. I just upgraded to the premium version about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But highly recommend it if you do much writing or are going to do much writing, because it does point out a lot of passive voice, punctuation, grammar type points. So it's extremely helpful. And again, the free one works pretty well on its own.
Absolutely. Good point. Well, the other thing too is, don't be bashful about letting somebody else read your document and get your input, because a different perspective can be incredibly valuable. When you guys, develop a resume, what I recommend is the first resume, don't worry about the length. It can be 3 pages, it can be 4 pages. The whole point is to make sure you've got one complete document. And the document that you present ultimately needs to be fine-tuned to the job or the nature of the contact. For instance, recruiters want to know your full, especially executive recruiters, want to know your full work history. They want to know where you got your foundation and what your foundation was all about. So for those of you that have accounting and financial backgrounds, they want to know if you spent time working for one of the big 4, I guess now, accounting firms, because that tells a lot about the training and the development you got and the preparation for the next job. If you're sending a resume to a company, an internal recruiter, maybe they only need to see the last 10 years of your work history, and that's fine. But the whole point is have one complete document that goes back to the beginning of your career, and then you can modify the length of your resume depending on the situation. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But just understand that everybody that's receiving your resume isn't looking at it the same way. So present a resume that is appropriate to the individual receiving it. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of people use is they don't take advantage of the header and footer functions in MS Word, Microsoft Word, which is a very powerful tool and can be very helpful in spacing and presentation. So keep that in mind. Below the header, I instruct people to create a headline, and this is large font, maybe up to 20 points, bolded. It gets to the point that Richard made a few minutes ago about what do you do, who do you do it for, and how do you do it? So there's really 3 issues there. What level are you in your career? Are you a C level? Are you director level? Are you manager level? What's your field of expertise? Is it finance? Is it operations? Is it accounting? Is it marketing? And then finally, what's your industry specialty? And the point of calling out an industry specialty is that more and more employers are looking for specialists nowadays, especially in the private equity world. They've got a shorter time horizon. They've got a number of things that they want to accomplish during that period. So they're looking for people that could come in and hit the ground running and help them specifically get the job done. In the case, again, of financial executives, if they're, taking a public company private, they want to have somebody on board that's done that. If they're getting a company ready to go IPO, they want somebody that's done that. If they are going through some major software changes or upgrades in their financial package, they want somebody that's got experience doing that. And the fact of the matter is, although all of our careers have been, fairly general to some extent, we can turn those, our experience into specialties in at least 2 or 3 areas that we can present, prominently out there. So, be thinking of how do you match the need of the job with your career by making it as specialized as possible.
Well, Jim, if I could add something there, it's interesting what you said about finance, because in marketing, I've learned this, especially with chief outsiders, is that we've come to the realization that because of technology and how things have changed the last 5 years, there's no such thing as what we call a full stack CMO. And so like within chief outsider, we've got some people that are great at doing branding and strategy and brand proposition and stuff, and some other ones that are digital experts. And then there's a bunch of us like me that kind of have a little bit of that generality all throughout. So that's a really good point on coming up with that niche, because that's kind of the hard part for when one's going into a search.
Absolutely. So after your headline, then you get into the your positioning statement. Otherwise, you can call it an executive summary. So it's the positioning statement really gets at fundamentally what are those what are those 3 main points that you're trying to get across. The first sentence needs to tell people that you're a C-level financial executive with experience in manufacturing. Boom, that's it. So they get it right away. The next sentence probably is very useful in telling them, the major area of expertise that you can bring to the table, whether it's startups, turnarounds, taking and integrating acquisitions, something that you're really good at, that's strategic and that really supports the kind of position they might be trying to fill. And the third sentence would be, a little bit about your personal skill set that has made you successful. So again, the positioning statement, 3 sentences tops. You don't want to get into a lot of adjectives about, what a wonderful person you are. Just state the facts. And the first sentence has to be who you are, what you do, and how do you do it, kind of a thing. The next thing that I like to see is just a brief summary in sort of table format of your skill stack, things that you've accomplished, and the professional skills that you bring to the party. Again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, for the body of your resume, 12-point font is ideal. 14 to 16 point for section headers, like your executive summary, aka positioning statement, skill stack, experience, and then education. Those things need to be 14 to 16 point bolded headers. And your headline, try to get that as close to 20 points as possible. The next thing is, again, this really makes the resume more readable and more interesting. When you get into your experience, the enlisting by company, just give them a brief line. What does the company do? A lot of companies, aren't familiar to people. So a little bit of an overview, no more than a sentence, a short sentence, telling them what they do and maybe the size of the company and revenue, or if it's international, or the number of employees can be helpful. Then the next couple sentences might be specifically what your job responsibilities were. Again, keep it short and sweet. Then below each job heading that you've had, use bullet points to identify your accomplishments. And the rule of thumb that I've always subscribed to is 7 bullets, 7 points, or 7 words. Because the whole point of the crafting a useful resume is for the information to jump off the page at the reader. So they're absorbing it as more than just reading it. So bullet points are really useful in getting to the brain faster than having to go and read a paragraph or sentences and things like that. 7 bullets, 7 points. And those accomplishments should all be, quantifiable. So you're talking about percentage of revenue growth, or, dollars of financing that you've raised, or, things like that. Now, it's also very useful to use the table format when you're doing your listing your experience in terms of the job, the company, and the years that you worked there. Because the table format, even if it's only a table of 3 columns and maybe 2 lines, it holds the tabs a lot better than if you just set your own tabs. And the last thing that I would say on your resume, after you get it completed in Word, then save it as a PDF document. Sending your resume as a PDF document provides a lot more integrity and holds all the formatting than if you did it via Word, which can get kind of squirrely in transmission. And I believe that none of this information is new to any of you all with your background and experience. So it's just something to remember.
Question, Jim.
Sure.
I thought I had heard or read somewhere that putting a table in a resume was detrimental to how the bots search and the automated search functions, because it like stops at a table or something.
Yeah, I've heard that. The one thing I would say is this. You guys are senior executives. I don't really think that you're going to be sending your resume into job boards and have to worry too much about the ATS systems. You're going to be sending it directly to a person that will be receiving this. I find it very, it's a good point, Doug, but I think that's more appropriate for much lower level positions than the senior level folks are on this call.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. All right, I really like bios, and bios can be very useful sending to folks, especially if you're sending it, cold, because a bio, is something people tend to read. It's more inviting than a resume, and it's more interesting because, again, you're telling your career story. So here's the recommendations for using a bio. And if you don't have a bio, I recommend that you create one, because it is very, very useful. Keep your bio to 2 pages maximum. Again, you want to make it read like a story, so it is your story. Try to look for a common theme in your career that repeats itself, so people understand clearly, what you're all about and what your strengths are and the kind of work that you do. It's written in the 3rd person. It's also can be a foundation for your LinkedIn profile, which this kind of activity will be very useful over a number of different platforms. And as I said before, a bio is much more likely to be read than a resume. Any thoughts or questions there? And again, when you're writing your bio, avoid the use of exception, a lot of adjectives and adverbs. Try to keep it, pretty much to the point and factual. All right, cover letters, my favorite. Now, you're going to be using cover letters when you send a resume into a a company or to a recruiter, and possibly if you're going to send a resume in blind. If you're going to send a resume in blind, at least send it to somebody that's a live individual that that will be receiving it. Don't ever send a resume out or any kind of a cover letter out to whom it may concern or anything like that. Thankfully, with the internet, with LinkedIn, and all the other tools out there, you'll be able to find the right person to send a resume to, whether it's an internal recruiter for a company, a head of HR, department head, the CEO, whoever. Send it to a real person, address it to that person, but be brief and to the point. If you're sending in a resume in response to a job posting, the first line should be referencing the job in question. In other words, I'm responding to a job posting you had for a CFO for XYZ company. Get that right off the bat so that people will understand immediately what's the point of all this. Then indicate probably 3 reasons why you're a good fit for that position based on the requirements they put in the job. Then attach the resume, and that'll be the end of that. Again, they're just going to scan the cover letter anyway. So they want to know what they're scanning it for, and then they'll go read your resume. If it's an unsolicited resume, specifying the kind of job you're looking for. And be as, when I say specify, I'm, job title, job responsibilities, so that people don't have to wonder, well, what am I going to do with this resume? If they get a resume that indicates you're looking for a VP of operations or a director of operations, they'll know right away what to do with the resume. If they're looking for a job that says, or a cover letter that talks about all the skills and the things you've done in your past, then they're probably not going to finish reading it because it's just too time consuming. And that's going to work against you. Bottom line is to always ask for an interview, whether it's a phone call or a face-to-face. You got to close the sale. So what I thought I would do is give you a couple of examples of really cringeworthy introductions that I've seen recently. Actually, some from some of my coaching clients, and some that I've just received unsolicited. So you'll get the point, I think. Now here's a guy. The first one is a guy that developed a mass mail cover letter for his resume, and so you can see, in parentheses, it says the company's field of business. Okay, industry has gone insane. Company is navigating in the pandemic economy chaos and upheaval while searching for position. I literally wrote and taught the university course on change management and creative problem solving, putting me in a unique position as the solution to your position hiring need. As you well know, these times require hires who can lead their area from day to day and find creative solutions to the myriad of challenges out there. I can and will do that for the company. Now, does anybody think that anybody receiving this is going to actually read that? I mean, seriously. Again, it's just everybody knows the situation we're in. They want you to get to the point. Here's another one. Same guy. Why the gilded envelope? Every golden day is filled with 24 platinum hours, dotted with 60 ruby minutes of 50 emerald seconds. Time is treasure. Blah, blah, blah. Now, frankly, if somebody sent that to me, I don't think I'd want to work with them. I mean, it's like, it sounds more like a BS artist than a professional. And then here's...
Might work well for a jewelry company.
I wouldn't want to know what he's doing with the other 10 seconds
Yeah.
of the minutes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's just, it's just unproductive. Now here's a much more appropriate opening sentence. I would be most appreciative if you would take a few minutes to evaluate the enclosed resume to determine whether I could be a strong contributor as a member of your staff. Then he goes on to say, I'm looking to serve an organization with demonstrated commitment to success. And again, you get into the blah, 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 cringeworthy stuff. If he had just said, I would be most appreciative if you had taken a few minutes to evaluate the enclosed resume to determine that if I could be a contender for a specific position in your company would be appropriate. Better yet, say, hey, I am interested in finding a director of operations role with your company and would appreciate consideration of my resume. I mean, that's all you really need to say. Now, here's an example of a much better intro letter. Hello, if you have a client seeking a senior enterprise sales executive who can deliver bottom line results, I'd like to make a strong case for myself. Now, this was written for me, for an executive recruiter, which, you know, in my book is fine. I know immediately he's looking for a senior enterprise sales position, and he's, you know, P&L oriented. So that would entice me to read on and, you know, consider him if I had a search for a senior enterprise sales executive. So any questions there? Do y'all sort of get the point that I'm trying to make? The point is, get to the point. You know, everybody understands the real world. Everybody's time is valuable, and they want you to tell them what you're looking for in as few words as possible, and make it really easy for them to understand what it is that you're looking to do.
Jim, some of those cringeworthy examples were great examples. Had somebody used Grammarly, would have helped fix some of the passive voice deals, because I looked at one of the sentences, just one sentence, that would have cut out 2 or 3 words.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you letters. Now, thank you letters are still important. And remember, the issue of a thank you letter is not necessarily saying thank you, which is important though. The issue is reinforcing the reason why they should consider you as a viable candidate for any job. A thank you letter, in another way of saying it, is just another way to help close the deal. It's a sales letter. Email is fine, but if you write a handwritten note to a female that you've interviewed with, you know, that's a big plus. You know, that's a gender difference that's surprising, but you know, very very true. Women appreciate a handwritten note far more than an email. And guys, you know, they're fine with an email, you know, as long as you get to the point. Anybody have any questions on that? Is that controversial in any way? Okay.
The only thing I would say, Jim, was I think I had a case once last year. I did the note for a woman, and in this particular case, they were moving fast enough. The note didn't get there before they'd made a decision. So sometimes the note is, you know, it's slower. So, but I'd say in most cases it doesn't matter, because most times they're moving a lot slower, for as long as you write it the day after you've had the interview, the same day, and get the mail right away.
You know, that's a good point, Doug, and it might be useful to do both for a female, both an email thank you note and then a more personal thank you note, handwritten. That's a real good point. Again, keep the thank you note short and to the point. Make sure it's specific to the person that you interviewed with. Try to you know, say something that you know, helps make a personal connection with that person that you talked about in the interview. Maybe they have a hobby that that they enjoy doing. Maybe there's some other you know, professional connection that you can make. But the whole point is to reinforce the top 3 unique selling propositions that you offer that dovetail with the needs of the position. So you're thanking them, but at the same time, you're reinforcing the fact that you need to hire me because, and you know, bullet point for those. if you don't get the job, I mean, it's still a good networking opportunity, and keep those people on your network, because if there's anything that you can do for them in the future, whether or not that you end up going to work for them or not, can be a very important investment in the future. People notice if you don't send out, or if they don't receive the thank you note from their candidates, because a thank you note reinforces the fact that you want the position. By not sending a thank you note, it's just a strike against you, that they may think that, well, maybe he wasn't all that serious about going to work for us. Okay, LinkedIn. Now, for those of you that know Greg Burkhalter, he presented to us last month. If you know Greg, he is the expert in how LinkedIn can build your personal brand and how important it is. If ever you have an opportunity to hear one of his presentations, then I would definitely encourage you to do so. So I'll just give you my top 6 points on LinkedIn. This is an area that is becoming more and more powerful as a way for companies and recruiters to search for viable candidates. So you've got to be visible on LinkedIn, and your presentation on LinkedIn needs to be complete and as professional as possible. So really encourage you to take this very seriously, and to seek out help if you need it. Again, make sure that your profile is complete and current. And when I say complete, go all the way back to the beginning of your career, because people are, again, they're looking for the foundational experience that you have. They want to know where you got your training, and they can assess, a lot about the way you operate and think by what they know about those early employment situations you had. Indicate that you're open for new opportunities, and I think there's LinkedIn has now made it very easy for you to do that, so that it actually shows up right on your profile picture that you're open to new opportunities. I don't recall exactly how to do that, although that should be easy to search. Again, make sure that your contact information is complete and current. Oftentimes, people will not, fill out their contact information, so it makes it difficult for people to reach out to them via, a preferred email address or a telephone number. And sure, they can send you an email through LinkedIn, but a lot of people, don't respond too quickly to LinkedIn emails or in-mails. If you don't have the cell phone app for your LinkedIn account, I really recommend that you have that, especially in job search, because you'll be notified whenever you get an in-mail, and you can respond more quickly using that. Also include your LinkedIn hyperlink on your correspondence. One of the big pet peeves that I've got as an executive recruiter is I'll get a resume, or I'll get a notification from somebody that is looking either for me to do a search or to help them out, but they don't have their signature block complete. And frankly, most people are out and about, and they use their cell phones or their iPads. They want to be able to get back to you as quickly as possible by just depressing that link, being automatically connected to you. So a lot of people underestimate the value of having a complete contact information in your LinkedIn profile. The other thing I would also recommend is, if there's some way to add it to your, the written part of your profile, your bio, so to speak, then I would include it there too. And any other place in your LinkedIn profile that will make it easy for people to find you. The other point that I would make is I have learned, or at least had confirmation from one of the senior counselors at Lee Hecht Harrison, who you all know is one of the big outplacement firms, that especially for senior executives, to the extent that they're out there, writing articles or posting blog posts, or even commenting on articles that they've read and appreciate, is a tremendous way to get recognition and shorten your job search. And what he's told me is that writing articles, posting them on LinkedIn is significantly reduces your time in search. So I really recommend that you consider starting to blog, or posting articles, or commenting on articles that you've read that you think are viable. And then the final point that I would add is by commenting on articles that others have written is another way to expand your exposure, the exposure of your brand, and get more recognition in the LinkedIn universe, which ultimately will shorten your job search. Any questions you might have on LinkedIn?
Yeah, Jim, one question. If I remember right from Greg's presentation last month, he said that we shouldn't share an article, like write your own content, yes, comment on articles like you said, but don't share one, because that tends to hurt the searchability and views for both of you, apparently. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think the issue is, it's better to post your own content, but my lighting is getting screwed up. But certainly, there's nothing wrong with sharing content. I think it's just a question of what has the most impact.
Sorry, Jim, it's Peter here. What's your view on the premium on LinkedIn and getting premium? Or
I'm a big proponent of using the premium version, and the reason is it gives you more opportunity to reach out and contact people, and the additional benefits that you get from the premium package is well worth it. I mean, I think it's like $50 a month or $600 a year, so it's well worth it.
Well, and then the other thing to consider, if you're in a selling environment or you're trying to sell your services, the Sales Navigator has some benefits too. So you just have to look at the options for both to see which might be better for your circumstances.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I always recommend that people go the premium route because it really is a very good value.
Yeah, I found it really helpful. It makes it searching your contacts, and where they've worked makes it a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. Good. Any other questions on LinkedIn? Since Microsoft has purchased LinkedIn, they've done a good job of adding value to this platform, and they're continuing to improve it and make it more useful. So I really recommend that you use it to the fullest extent, because, like I said, a lot of people nowadays are using LinkedIn, both internal and external recruiters, to find their candidates. Okay, and so that brings us up to the whole point about writing articles or blogging. Blogging is about helping position yourself as a subject matter expert, or to demonstrate your professional capabilities. And frankly, your point of view matters, and it expands the reach of your market. So it makes it easier for you to get broad exposure. The easiest thing to do is just talk from your experience. You don't have to write a scholarly post. It can just be your experience and your opinions. I mean, people find value in that. One of the tricks that I've learned over the years that's really helped me get search assignments is to call up prospective clients, usually the CEO, and tell them I'm working on an article, and ask them if they'd be interested in providing some insight or make a contribution, and let them know that you'd be happy to provide a quote and get them some exposure. And the one thing, is kind of amusing, but it's a fact of life. If you call somebody up looking for a job, if they take their call, they can't get you off the phone fast enough. If you call somebody up asking for their opinion, when you're working on an article, for instance, you can't get them off the phone fast enough. They want to help you. They want to, talk about their expertise. They want to, get their thoughts and experience and position out there in the blogosphere. So it's an incredibly powerful tool, and just a great way for you to enhance either your job search or looking for a consulting client.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim. So I've got a personal note. I had a client one time who's working on a PhD, and the thesis of his he was working on had to do with aerospace industry and a certain segment in air travel. And he was working on his PhD, but that's going to take a long time. What he really wanted was to get into that industry, and he had zero experience in the industry. And he was able to use, just like you're saying, he was able to do I'm working on my PhD, and I'm talking to executives and leaders in the industry, and I'd like to get your input. He used that story over and over again, and he got into almost everyone, like CEOs and presidents of companies he wanted to talk to, by using exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that's another good point, Richard, is that, people like being, mentors and provide some coaching. And so if you put them it's a non-threatening position. So if you ask them if they would be interested, then, few people are going to say no. And the people that do say no, probably not the kind of people you want to work for anyway. So, the bottom line on a blog post, essentially it's an essay. We've all, had experience writing essays in school, and probably for other reasons. So, keep it at 600 to 750 words. I really like about that 700 word format. Some people write longer blog posts, and, that works in some cases. But I think, as near as I can tell, the optimal is someplace around 700 words. Make it interesting. Tell a story. Any questions about blogging? So you can put you can post directly to LinkedIn. One of the features that we have at ITB Partners is a blog page where we encourage our members to post, and then I am able to provide additional exposure by our email marketing services and our social media platform. But blogging is very powerful and very, very important today. So we're finally down to the summary, and I've got about 8 minutes left. Not bad. The bottom line is to understand the importance of the your written communications. It's a whole risk-reward trade-off. You want to make sure that you get enough information to the reader that will satisfy your goal. Hopefully it'll be an interview, but not so much information that you turn them off and they scratch their head wondering, well, who in the world is this person? So always edit for brevity, clarity, spelling, grammar, and syntax. Don't be bashful about asking other people to, you know, to read your post, whatever it is, whether it's your resume, bio, cover letters. You know, most people are kind of impressed that you would ask them to help them out. So again, that can be very useful. Know your audience. Never send an email to somebody or a written document to somebody that's general in terms. Always want to send it directly to a specific person. To whom it may concern is not appropriate. Don't waste the reader's time. Get to the point as quickly as possible. Think in terms of presenting your story in your bio, your resume, you know, any document that, you know, you send out. People want to know your story. It's one of the most compelling ways to conduct a job search as there is. Yeah, sure, they're interested in knowing what you accomplished, but they really want to know, you know, your career progression and your career story. And the bottom line is, get professional help if you need it. Don't be bashful about that. I mean, it's well worth the investment. Richard, do you have any, I know you've told several stories about helping people get sizable salary increases. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, thanks for asking. I just used the quintessential one was CFO. I've worked with a lot of finance, sales, and marketing people, and a couple of years ago, I had a CFO client, and he went through the interview process, and they made him a offer for $400,000, and I have like an analysis of job offer and negotiating position and development of negotiating strategy type process that tail into the job search. And we went through this, and he basically made 2 calls to the employer and was able to get the offer raised from 400 to 600. So that's the most extreme example I could give. Most of them are much more modest, but what I always say about that is I think people leave money on the table in most cases. Job seekers feel at a disadvantage. Jim, and be interested in your comments, but I feel like seekers feel at a disadvantage, and sometimes they underestimate the leverage they have, because if an employer's gone through all this process and they've decided that you're the person they want, in my mind, this power shifts to the candidate briefly, where they have a window of opportunity to leverage that.
Well, that's true. And you got to be careful there. And that's where a professional can really help you navigate the amount of, you know, negotiating potential you might have. And again, you know, the first offer or the offer is always their low point. They're never going to give you the, you know, their best offer. So there's always negotiating room. You know, if you're working with a recruiter, they can help you understand, you know, the parameters of that negotiation. And the last thing I would say about negotiations is, remember, negotiations is a part of the interview process. And I can't tell you how many candidates I have recommended that the client didn't pursue because their negotiating style was really unprofessional and unproductive. And if that was a very interesting window on their professional demeanor. So negotiating is important to close the deal and get the best deal, but understand that you're being evaluated in that process. Just like if you take the first offer, you know, that probably says something potentially negative as well, if you don't try to get a better deal for yourself.
Yeah, your point, obviously you can blow it if you don't know what you're doing or you don't do it well. I'll give you the other extreme. I had a client for a lower level position, and they got a written job over by email about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. and they asked me, what should I do? And after we talked about it, I said, you should sign this thing. And this time they were faxing. I said, I recommended another person, they should sign the job offer and send it back immediately. And the reason for that was they had internal candidates I know that the person was competing against. And so you don't want to rock the boat if there's strong internal candidates.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I would just share with the group. I mean, I just remembered this when you talked, Richard. I remember way back in my career, I had been flown back to corporate for a couple interviews with the CEO and the higher ups and the directors for a strategic accounts position. It was very prestigious. I was told I was going to get the job. And then another internal candidate, you know, an internal candidate put his name in the hat with, you know, great credentials. You know, if you're an outsider and you're being told you get the job, and if someone puts their hat in the mix that's internal, they will almost always go with the internal candidate.
Yes.
And don't get upset at that. Don't get discouraged at that. It's just the way life is. So.
Well, and every situation is a networking opportunity. So, you know, you might be disappointed in that situation, Todd, but that doesn't preclude other opportunities arising with the same company down the line. So
Yeah.
just don't burn any bridges.
Yeah, that's great advice, you know. And then people probably feel, Jim, Richard, people who were giving you the green light probably have a sense of, oh, geez, I got, you know, kind of got to find a way to help this guy because he, you know, I kind of let him down, you know. So
Right.
They're probably in a great position to help you, right? Because
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
they,
if
you
you've
know, they
developed-
have their network, and they, you know, they can refer you to somebody else.
Yeah.
You've developed a good rapport, then yeah, anybody you refer with that's in a position of authority can potentially help you